All right, let's dive right into this breathtaking 1500-year-old Buddhist scripture to unpack the core concepts of the Great Vehicle. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to look deeply at the text of the Dazi Du Lun, which is attributed to the great philosopher Nagarjuna. Today, we're exploring how this ancient text takes our everyday common-sense understanding of reality, space, and time, and just completely turns it on its head.
Here is the quick roadmap for our explainer today. We'll start with surpassing all worlds, then look at the boundless space metaphor, unpack the paradox of emptiness, and finish up with beyond time and motion.
So, kicking things off with Section 1, surpassing all worlds and the whole illusion of reality.
Right at the jump, we get this massive, universe-spanning claim from the disciple Subhodhi. He says, the Mahayana surpasses all worlds and all gods, humans, and asuras. I mean, wow. Notice how he frames the Great Vehicle here. He's not just saying, hey, this is a pretty solid philosophy. He's literally saying it completely shatters the boundaries of every single known realm. It's positioned as something operating on an entirely different plane of existence.
Now, before we get too deep in the weeds, let's make sure we actually know what the text means by the word Mahayana, just so we have the essential vocabulary to understand its immense scale. Basically, it's the supreme path, and it's built on two main pillars. First, you've got the practical side, which is the 6 paramitas, things like generosity, morality, patience, and wisdom. And second, you have the philosophical side, which is this profound realization of ultimate emptiness. It's the whole shebang.
And that brings us to exactly why it surpasses all worlds. You see, our worldly reality, even the really high-level divine stuff, is ultimately just a fragile illusion. It's constructed out of names, desires, and impermanence. It's totally a house of cards. But the Mahayana? It's anchored in ultimate emptiness, non-arising, and true reality. Because the Great Vehicle isn't built on fragile temporary conditions that eventually break down, it literally can never be broken. That is its ultimate power.
Moving right along to Section 2, the boundless space metaphor. Let's see how they mirror the void. To really help us wrap our heads around this emptiness idea, the Buddha uses this amazing visual metaphor and systematically strips away all our usual conceptual anchors. Think about empty space for a second. Try to point to the east of empty space itself. You can't, right? It doesn't have an up or a down. It doesn't have colors. It's not blue or yellow or red. And there are no shapes. It's not square and it's not round. By taking away literally everything we use to measure and define our everyday reality, the text forces our minds to just let go of those limitations.
Which leads us to this absolutely crucial equation. The Mahayana is exactly like empty space. The Great Vehicle and space share this ultimate characteristic of being totally ungraspable and without form. You can't paint it, you can't put it in a box, and you for sure cannot slap a definitive label on it.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, the paradox of emptiness, and how it manages to hold the infinite.
Now, this is where things get super interesting. This is the logical paradox that really keeps us leaning in. We just established that the Mahayana is like empty space, totally formless and devoid of attributes. So, if a vessel is truly empty, if it's essentially just nothingness, how on earth does it hold everything? How can it possibly receive and save infinite sentient beings? It's a huge puzzle.
Well, the text delivers this mind-blowing answer. It completely flips the logic of the question on its head. It basically says, because all beings are ultimately non-existent, empty space can hold them. Because it is empty, the Mahayana can receive infinite beings. So it's precisely because the Mahayana lacks any defining limits or substantial reality that its capacity is infinite. It's a perfect match.
Think about it like this. Imagine a physical container, like a coffee cup or a massive cargo ship. It has a limited capacity, right? It's restricted by its defined shape and its solid walls. Once it's full, no way around it. But empty space? It has an infinite capacity. It's boundless precisely because it has no form and no walls. Space can hold billions of galaxies because it isn't a thing taking up room. The Great Vehicle works exactly the same way.
And that brings us to our final stop, Section 4, Beyond Time and Motion, where we'll look at the ungraspable present.
Here, the dialectic playfully but completely destroys our whole idea of physical movement. The text argues that things don't actually come from anywhere, they don't go anywhere, and they don't stay anywhere. Think about the act of going. It requires a goer and the action of going. They're completely mutually dependent illusions.
If you try to isolate the exact microsecond of motion, you can't find it in the space you've already covered, and you can't find it in the space you haven't covered yet. Motion itself just becomes this totally ungraspable concept.
And guess what? This same logic applies directly to time. Normally, we think of time as this neat, clean progression, right? Past, present, future. But the text humorously yanks the rug right out from under our concepts of before and after, labeling every single phase of time as totally ungraspable.
It breaks it down like this. The front edge, the past, cannot be found. Why? Because it's already gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Then you have the back edge, the future. You can't find that either because it hasn't happened yet. And what about the middle edge, our beloved present moment? Well, you can't find that either because the exact millisecond you try to pinpoint the present, boom, it's already slipped into the past. Since these three concepts only exist relative to each other, when you really look closely, none of them actually possess an independent, solid reality.
So here is the ultimate takeaway. The text says, past, present, and future are equally empty. This equality of the three times is the Mahayana. Realizing the complete emptiness of time itself is the realization of the great vehicle. It's not about traveling successfully through time to eventually reach some enlightenment in the future. It's about waking up to the fact that the timeline itself is just a brilliant, empty illusion.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought for today's explainer, directly inspired by Nagarjuna's masterful deconstruction of reality. If the past is entirely gone, the future hasn't even arrived, and the present is completely ungraspable, where exactly are you existing right now? Think about that empty space. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope this completely shifts how you view the space and time around you. Until next time, keep questioning everything.